Welcome to this session about standalone workflows and public maps. In the next couple of minutes, we will check the prerequisites, see how to configure the workflow manager to run as a standalone application. Then we will define a workflow and add public maps. And finally, we will run the workflow to see the result in the browser. To use workflows as a standalone application and then include public maps, GMedia Smart Client must be installed and configured correctly. Furthermore, if you would like to use public maps, you need to configure a Smart Client project, and based on this project, you must configure public maps. Once GMSC has been installed, you can simply copy the workflows folder to a separate directory and create an application in IIS that is pointing to this directory. As always, the application should use its own application pool, and the app pool should be configured to run as a network service. Next, the workflow config has to be modified in order to override the default configuration, as the installed version is configured to run with GMSC. Therefore, we have to set the authorization provider, connection provider and session provider using alternative providers. There would be more providers in there, but these are the free ones that we need to update. For sure, you could define custom providers and configure the application to run using your own providers, but in our case we will just use built-in alternative providers, and for the authorization provider we will use an anonymous authorization provider, so no login will be required and there will be no authorization checks. We will use the connection provider as the built-in connection provider. There you need to define the connection string in the connection settings up there, and we set the session provider to use the workflow session provider. Whenever you have the workflow session provider, a sex session table needs to be defined in the database or schema of the connection that you have defined in the connection strings up here. In this session we will create a workflow called AXGN Live Events, and the connection string has already been defined for this workflow. In this session we would like to create a workflow that allows us to add new events to the system so that we can locate them in public maps, as the application is already configured to search for these events. So as we can see here, we can already search for hotels. Now we would also like to be able to search for some events, and we need to add these events to the system first. Therefore, we start the workflow editor and create a new project. Let's call it HXGN Live Events. To make it easier, we have already pre-configured the workflow, so we already have the forms and the general workflow settings ready for use. We have two forms in there, one for the list and one for the detail view. The list has three form fields, easy ones, and the form itself for the detail view is configured to use the geometry to be able to capture them, has the table as the sample events. We use a custom script in there, and then we just have a bunch of form fields to define the event details, and the structure itself looks very simple. We have a custom theme, then we have an overview node to get the entries there as a list, and we can edit existing ones, and later on we can create new entries for our event table. Let's have a quick look on the client side. We can see we are using a custom header. Then we can see the current node is the overview node, but at the moment there are no events in there. So what we need to do is create new entries. On the new entries we can see the basic detail values, and on the second one we have a tooltip tab. And now we would like to add the public maps to this form, as we would like to capture the POIs on the map and geolocate the events. To use public maps and workflows, a form map view element must be added to the form. and the element, as we have already prepared it for you, needs a name, a label, the base URL to point to the public maps application. Then the site must be defined and the project that has been configured for public maps within this site. Furthermore, we would like to capture the event, and therefore we add a form action to activate the point draw in public maps, and the event here is called activate point draw. In public maps you could also capture lines and polygons. And whenever geometries are captured within a form together with public maps, a form action must be defined to store the form values and the geometry together, and therefore you need to use the map viewer, and out of the map viewer you need to go to save geometry, and in our case whenever it has been saved successfully, we would just like to navigate forth in the workflow. So now let's have a look at the final workflow. We are again in the overview. Let's click on new. Now we can see public maps is coming up within the workflows, and we have our save action down here. So let's create a new event in here. Let's call it the hexagon live event, and give it some description. And in order to be able to search for the event, let's add some tags. And now we need to capture the event on the map. So the hexagon live will take place at the MGM Grand Hotel. Let's remove that one, zoom out a bit to get a better overview. Okay, we are here. Let's place the point and capture the point location down here. And for sure, we would like to get a nice looking tooltip. In our case, our tooltip consists of an image and an alternative text with 250 per 45. Insert that one, and furthermore we would like to get a hyperlink for it. So whenever we click on the POI and we get the POI information, we would like to open this one in a new tab. Furthermore, we would also like to add a map tooltip to get tooltip information on the map, and we again will use an image for that one and an alternative text with width and height of 600 per 83. Insert that one, and here for sure we will not need any tooltip info or any hyperlink in there. So let's save it, and we have created our first event. You can click on that one, and the custom script that is also in there automatically zooms to that one and activates this POI, and we can see we have it in here. If we zoom out, go away, search for that event, hexagon live, we will be pointed to our new event in the MGM Grand. And for sure the same thing may be found in the standalone public maps version. So if we have a quick look at that one, if we're now in the standalone version, look for the HXGN live event, we will get the same event on the map. So this was the session about standalone workflows and public maps. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for your attention.